board has in terms of allocating funds is more like 8 to 10%. It's 10% is probably the rosy, and it would probably even be.
You got to keep the doors open.
And as Mr. Hodge even pointed out, and we've talked about numerous times, the problem is when we look at this document, okay, is what do you do to keep the 92% that has all the resources already pre-allocated to them from suffocating the 8% of what's left for taking care of the things that are a priority to us in the community. And we could sit idly by and allow that to happen, or we can say, no, we're going to fund the things that are our priorities out of the discretionary funds that we collect in terms of the basic taxes that are generated by the community. And if there are shortfalls on the 92% side in terms of state mandates, whatever is driving that engine, we're going to have to find other ways to do that and to sacrifice our local quality of life just to accommodate some shift that might have taken place in Sacramento or Washington does not serve our community. And I think that, to me, is always the biggest battle. Now, to the staff's credit, and I'm not saying this to be patronizing, and I'm not saying this to be condescending, I'm not saying this, but other than to kind of state it is what it is. They work very hard at what they do, but they also are very cautious, and they're not only worried about this year, they're worried about many years out. And like those of us who are conservative in our own personal finances, we have a tendency wanting to hoard our resources because we know, it's kind of like the gleaner Ruth in the Bible, in terms of you collect it and then the day comes when you're going to really need it. And we've had some significant budget challenges from the state over the last 10 years. We've had the recession that we've had to survive through. And I think because of the tendency of the staff, and for that matter, the board, embracing policies, we have been very conservative in our outlays. We are debt-free. We don't have the fanciest things. We live within our means, and that's what we strive to do. And I think because of that, we're maybe unique in many instances with other public agencies around the state. And I applaud the fact that we make the effort. The staff, when they look at their salaries, yeah, everybody would like to make more, and everybody would like to have more benefits and everything, but they realize there's only so much that's going to be available. So, I applaud all of them for contributing to the solution and not being a part of the problem. But at the same time, to take the position that what we have, and we're not going to share any of the resources with the things that are defined by the community as probably our most important needs, I think is out of line, and that's where I think the board has to be firm in saying we have to share and make things go around. But overall, there's a $25,592,720 is the carryover balance, of which the general fund is identified in here. It shows $1,091,160 in the general operating subtotal. We have the reserve fund of $3,174,766, and then you have scattered throughout here, you got welfare, health and human services, roads. These are all carryover balances that are $4 and $5 million. Mental Health Services Act fund, that has $1,760,000. So these are monies that just in the operating totals alone amounts to $22,128,577 of that almost $26 million that we're referring to. That shows you the effort that's made by staff to conserve the resources as they move along. Those are carryover monies that are coming into the budget equation. We show for the estimated revenues for the coming year is $86,974,576 overall, of which $14,714,000 of that is the general fund. You have another $1,383,000 coming in through the VLF. That's the vehicle license fee, the monies that are shoveled to us from the state. So the general fund has a projected revenue of $16,111,000. Now, it's important to share these numbers because over a period of time, and part of the vetting process that we'll do during the budget hearings is we're going to validate these numbers. Are we low-balling our projections, or are we overstating our projections? And that's something that has to be tested. And I guarantee you, every budget session or setting that I've sat through in the last 35 years with the county, we have never come in with the exact numbers to start with and leave with the exact numbers. And oftentimes, and even just last week or a week and a half ago, I was in the office, and my staff was really delighted because they discovered in one particular departmental budget where they had missed some revenue projections that should have been included but for whatever reason had dropped out, or had got sidetracked. And when you add it in, that adds another couple, $200,000-$300,000. Now the picture gets a little bit rosy, and then you find, somewhere along the lines where there maybe was a missing expenditure item, which now adds $200,000 to the problem, and so it all shuffles through, and that's the process the Budget Committee has been working with. So yes, on the surface, I would say the $3 million is something that we have to take notice of. Are we done yet? Absolutely not. And like, in the movie Dave, and I always liked that movie to refer to it, where when he was told there was no money and he was pretending to be the president and he sat down with his accountant, we're going to have to go through line item by line item, department by department, and examine what's there and what's real and what's not. And when we're all said and done with, we're going to deal with what the expenditures. The available revenues, according to the current spreadsheet, when you add the $25,594,000 to the $86,974,000, that's all funds across the board, of which the general fund's only 16 to 18 million. So let's not get too excited about all this free money. It comes to $112,569,000. The department request, and this is the significant thing, is $97,164,000, which means that they're inferring that there will be monies that will be carried forward from that particular pot, in the tune of around $14,699,000 is what is being projected. The CAO is recommending a budget of $97,869,000. Now the question is, how do all those numbers jumble around? Does public safety, get first dubs on the money as we go down through the lines? And I think each department that has a line item in the budget have a priority, and the priority is their office and their function. And I respect that and fully appreciate that and would expect no less than that. But the question is, does everybody get full funding in terms of what it is that they're asking for? That's going to be the judgment the board's going to have to make in the final analysis, and given any public input that would be consistent with that. Do we want more law enforcement? Do we want less law enforcement? 2 years ago, we were projected in a similar fashion, not quite maybe $3 million. I think it was in the neighborhood of about $2 million. And I had made the determination at the beginning of that budget cycle that I wanted to see 3 new positions added to the sheriff's budget. Even the sheriff was saying, I've got vacancies I got to fill first, but it was something that became a priority for the board. And we spent that whole week, started 9 a.m. on Monday, and we finished at 5:05 on Friday. If you recall, those that participated. Aaron, you weren't there, so you missed out on the fun. But when we were all said and done, and we were finished with that, even though we were told there was not the money in the budget because the priorities that were established at the beginning of the cycle turned out not to be the priorities that we found at the end of the cycle. As we got into it with this department or that department, and they were talking about, we need to do this, and we want to do that, and we're just saying, is that as important as doing these other things? And we made adjustments and accommodations along the way, and in the end, we found not only the $240,000 that we needed, but we found close to $500,000 worth of priority adjustments that were made. And it was made as a policy action by the board, so we were able to fund that. Now what I'm saying with this particular budget process that we're entering into, and this is what the next item is about, is that I want to see that $200,000 allocation, out of this $100+ million that we've got working at our disposal. The idea that we can't find $200,000 to fund a commitment to join with the city to build, and I disagree with Mr. Pyle in this respect. I'm not interested in building a $10 million aquatic center. I think the voters have demonstrated at the ballot box, and if we're going to talk about past votes, they've made it very clear they don't want. Some of us took a tour a few months ago. We went down. Gardnerville's got this huge complex. My mind was on overload just trying to track everything that was going on in there, and it easily exceeded the $18 million that was proposed back in 2004 on the item that was voted on then. But the operating budget just for that facility was like $2.4 million. And that's like half the city general fund. That's a big chunk. That's as big as like our sheriff's budget would be to do that. And there's no way we're going to be able to do something of that magnitude.
They levied themselves.
Huh?
They levied themselves.
Well, they levied, and they levied the properties on the Tahoe side of the county, so they're generating $1.8 million in terms of property tax, ad valorem tax, that is supporting it. That kind of money doesn't even exist in the valley, let alone be able to leverage it. I think what the community is talking about and what the proposal will be talking about next you know, is a very modest, basic type of a facility. And it may not, to begin with, even be a covered facility. It may only be allowed to operate year-round, but at least it is a start. And it plants the seed that as time goes on over the next 10 to 15 years, that it can evolve into something that the voters can embrace and eventually go to, you know, that JPA board, just like we have all the other JPAs, can go to the voters and say, you know, we would like them to levy. So ultimately, this thing hopefully can become self-supporting through that levies. And we've had this debate and this discussion now going on 10 years. And the problem is the progress has been made over the 10 years, all the false starts have reached a point where we've got to do something that's going to work. And within this dynamic here of the $112,569,296 I'm being told that could be available, that we're going to find $200,000, and I would like to see a line item added in there to add to it. Now, obviously, the $97,869,000 is the CAO's recommended budget according to this. I'd like to see that become $98,069,766 by adding the $200,000. So as we sort through the priorities in the budgets and we figure it out, we do that. Now, at the end of the day, come September 6th or whenever the day is that we close up shop, I guarantee you, if it turns out we have $75 million worth of revenue and $95 million worth of expenditures and we're $20 million upside down, there's going to be a lot more than just a swimming pool proposed that would be stricken from the budget. There would be a lot of other things. Now, I sat on a board back in 1992, 93, 91, 92, 92, 93 after the ERAP program was adopted by the state that stole 40% of our property tax monies at the time. And the board was put in a position where we had to lay off 40% of our general fund workforce. We jettisoned programs in their entirety. One of those programs was the county library. I voted no on doing that. I was outvoted, and I respect the fact that the majority, took the position they did. That's the harsh reality of the budgets and the budget numbers. And I'm not suggesting just because you take a vote, add something to it, the particular budget, that means that it's there, permanent and concrete. It just sets the stage to allow that consideration as we sort through these numbers. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think I've more than exhausted my remarks on the budget process. I appreciate what the Budget Committee has done. I would say it's a beginning, it's not an end.
Absolutely, it's not meant to be. We want the decisions here, we're not making them. But if I could, and I'm not disputing any of the numbers or anything else, but and I'm trying to stay on the general budget before we move to our next item, because that's going to, I realize they're in tandem. But I think the numbers we have to focus on as well, Supervisor Chapman, is the projected balance in the general fund at the end. If you can figure out any way to take MHSA money and pay for a pool, I would applaud it. But a lot of that ending balance, that's a positive number, is definitely there, and if we can reprogram any of that to do a poll, I'll look forward to it. The number I'm trying to focus on is the $677,000 deficit ending balance on the general fund, and I know we've got reserves to meet that, obviously. Well, we do. I don't want to sound like an alarmist up here. Everything's good, and we're going to have a healthy debate.
Well, three areas where I'm going to be looking to that I'm going to resist, and I'm going to be looking to do some shifting. First of all, for funding the request that I'm going to be asking that we add to the budget. And this is under the budget proposal discussion, not the later proposal or later agenda item. Is that, and I've heard the Budget Committee even make inferences too, like with the prison mitigation money. Those are monies that we negotiated 20 years ago. We negotiated $2 million. The fact that we still have between $500,000 and $600,000 available, 20 years later, to be honest with you, that amazes me. But that shows you just how judicious we are with those. To take those monies, those are to design to provide amenities for the community to offset the impacts of increasing the population due to the new prison being built. And well, to take that and use it to plug the hole of a hemorrhaging of a budget because of whether it's AB 109 or whatever the basis is a total contravention, in my opinion, of what the intent of what those funds are. And I'm going to be totally resistant to that. So if nothing else, the next 3 years of funding and that's money that we aren't using today for operating expenses of the county, have not used for operating expenses. It was a fund that was used to subsidize the effort that was made with the LRA program that proved to be fruitless, and whether we recover any of those monies or not to possibly replenish the prison mitigation fund. But if nothing else, for the next 3 years, that would give us a source of funding for this pool commitment, this joint project with the JPA, with the city, without touching any of the operational budgets that we have. Outside of that, if that's beyond that point, what I see as a potential area was the tobacco settlement monies. When the big tobacco companies settle with the state attorney general, we get that money flow coming in, and we've used those funds to support things like our family resource centers, which I'm 100% that we maintain that commitment. But it's supposed to go for the healthy activities in the community being provided. So whatever other uses that we have used those funds for within the budget operating line, operationally, we need to look at maybe shifting them to a more appropriate line item support. So there are a lot of areas within the budget that I think that could be carved out that would provide the revenue stream to support the commitment for, let's say, a pool-type project without necessarily impacting the other operations of county government. Now, the fact that there are some areas of county government that are in distress because of state action or whatever, court action, to take these other monies that are designed for the benefit of our community and use them to kind of plug on a one-time basis and use up, I think is a disservice to the whole process. And that's what I'm going to be fighting for us to make sure and do. So, yeah, I think there may be some rearranging to be done. And if we could figure out how we could use the MHSA monies to take care of the AB 109 cases, and leaving, our prison mitigation monies alone, whatever the case may be. Believe me, I'm going to look under every rock and check out every crevice.
Well, I look forward to it. Any other comments by board members before we? Now, we're going to take comments on the pool, and I know, as I said, these subjects go in tandem. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the general budget process? We will be starting these hearings, the budget hearings, September 3rd at 9 a.m. here in the boardroom. We have blocked off the whole week, and we're available to stay for that whole week, if you will, to take care of these budget items. So, and they will include the pool, certainly, as we go on. But anybody have any questions or comments before we kind of dive into the pool issue, if you will? No, we've already got it. I guess we exhausted the audience. No, sir. Yes, please.
You might want to.
You have to give your name. I'm sorry.
My name is Russell David. You might want to invite the rest of the people that are all in the building and here and listening to this.
We got.
Yeah, we can open doors and they can. Thank you, Russell. I appreciate the comment. And if any.